Good evening. Welcome everybody to tonight's meeting of the Finance Committee of the New Haven Board of Alders. I will begin our proceedings by reading the notice. Board of Alders notice. The Finance Committee will hold a public hearing on Monday, December 9, 2024, 6 o'clock p.m. in the Aldermanic Chambers, 165 Church Street, New Haven, to hear the following. 1. LM 2024-0538. Order to read and file the updated budgetary and financial reports for the month of July 2024 in compliance with Article 8, Section 5 of the Charter. 2. LM 2024-0615. Order to read and file the updated budgetary and financial reports for the month of August 2024 in compliance with Article 8, Section 5 of the Charter. Item 3. LM 2024-0709. Order to read and file the updated budgetary and financial reports for the month of September 2024 in compliance with Article 8, Section 5 of the Charter. Item 4. LM 2024-0714. Order to read and file the updated budgetary and financial reports for the month of October 2024 in compliance with Article 8, Section 5 of the Charter. Item 5, LM 2024-0638. Excuse me. Order of the New Haven Board of Alders concerning the communication from the Department of Finance submitting the annual comprehensive financial report for the City of New Haven fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023. Item 6, LM 2024-0639. Order of the New Haven Board of Alders concerning the communication from the Department of Finance submitting the federal and state compliance report for the City of New Haven fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023. Item 7, LM 2024-0711. Order of the Board of Alders authorizing the use of a multi-year interdepartmental MOU to formalize the obligation of American Rescue Plan funds to the Board of Education. Item 8, LM 2024-0635. Excuse me. Order of the New Haven Board of Alders authorizing the mayor of the City of New Haven to enter into a contract worth $370,936.81 with Yonder Incorporated for the purchase of cell phone pouches for use in New Haven public schools. Item 9, LM 2024-0585. Order of the Board of Alders of the City of New Haven authorizing the execution of agreement with Napa Tracks for software subscription to track the City of New Haven Department of Public Works vehicle parts and supplies for the period of July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2025. These items are on file and available for public inspection in the Office of Legislative Services, 165 Church Street. Per order, the Honorable Adam Marchand, Chair. Attest, Michael Smart, City Clerk. If you need a disability-related accommodation, please call 3 business days in advance, 203-946-7651 voice or 203-946-8582 TTY. Public comment/testimony may also be submitted via email to publictestimony@newhavenct.gov before 2 p.m. on the day of the meeting. Meeting can be viewed on Board of Alders YouTube page. We'll proceed next with introductions from members of the committee, starting to my right.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Richard Furlow, Ward 27.
Good evening, all. Yvette Hamilton, Ward 24.
Alder Rosa Ferraro Santana, Ward 13.
Sal DiCola, Ward 18.
Adam Marchand, Ward 25, Chair.
Sal Punzo, Ward 17.
Anna Festa, Ward 10. Facia Walker-Myers, Ward 23.
Thank you, colleagues. And we're glad that everybody's here. The agenda took a long time to read because there were a lot of items in it. But you'll be reassured perhaps to know that 4 of the items are going to go in one go, right? We have the July, August, September, and October monthly reports. And it makes sense to look at the October report for the most part, because that is more current and more informative. So that item, it sounds like 4 items, but it's really just one. And then we'll move into the comprehensive financial report for 2 fiscal years ago, and the federal and state compliance reports. So the beginning of our agenda will be reports. It will be scintillating. You won't be able to leave because you'll be so interested in it. When those reports are done, we'll then move to the other items, the interdepartmental MOU on the $5.5 million in ARPA funds, the cell phone pouch item, and the DPW software, vehicle tracker software, right? So we have reports at the first half of the meeting, and then the second half of the meeting are contracts and an interdepartmental MOU. So that is our plan for this evening, and without further excuse me, I meant to hold off from coughing. Let me just also say that when folks come forward, whether you're a presenter or the member of the public, please, you move the microphone mostly, not the base. Without the little guard on it, you don't want to be too close to it, otherwise it goes pop. So the distance I am from this microphone seems about right, okay? When folks come forward, they will give their names and addresses for the record before they begin. We appreciate that. And then finally, if you have a cell phone or other electronic handheld device that makes noises, thank you very much, please put it on mute or turn it off. And we thank you for your cooperation. Let's begin with the monthlies. And I see our Director of Management and Budget here.
So I did print out a synopsis of our October report. I think it's pretty informative. More informative, like I can talk to all the reports, but we didn't really start seeing any variances until October.
I want to give a moment to get the paper out, and then once the paper is distributed, you can give us your names and addresses for the record.
Sure. My name is Shannon McHugh. I'm the budget director, and I reside at 925 Orinoco Road, Waterbury, Connecticut.
Hi, Ron Gizzi, 219 Aramo Terrace, Camden.
Okay, so right here, it's an excerpt of the document that I sent. Is an excerpt of the October report. I can speak to all the monthly reports. However, for the July, August, and September reports, we were projecting a balanced budget. It was early on in the year, and there were no budget variances to speak of. And when we projected out what we thought we would spend versus what the revenues that we were taking in, we assumed a balanced budget, which is not uncommon for early in the year. At this point in October, we're seeing a little bit of a deficit, 723,000. And on the first page, you can see that you can see that our expenditures are expected to exceed revenues, like I said, by 573,000. The beginning fund balance on a budgetary basis was $50.3 million. So if this were to come to fruition, we would see a slight decrease in general fund balance. The other funds we expect to be balanced. The litigation fund, we do not foresee any pressure on that fund at this point in time. We stay abreast of any changes. And the same is true of the medical fund and the workers' comp fund. So if you turn the page to, it says page 2 of 77. There's some explanation of why we think, why we're projecting a modest deficit. So the first thing I'd like to point out is, if you look down, it says vacancy savings. So we had budgeted 1.5 million in vacancy savings. We believe that number will be higher. We're taking a conservative approach, which is how I usually do things, because the amount of hiring that's been going on, we've been paying attention to who's been coming and going, and we keep, careful track of personnel. And so we believe that those savings will be higher than what we budgeted. I have a number in about $2.3 million. Last year it was higher than that. I believe the number was around $6 million. So we do think we may have more. We're working diligently to try to hire as much as possible. So we do think that there will be more in vacancy savings. We had budgeted $1.7 million for contract reserve, but once you pay for the police retro payment, we believe that contract reserve we will use that 1.7, and there'll be, I put an additional 1.7 to cover the retro payments. And then there's a slight variance in the self-insurance fund for our insurance costs, which have been rising over a number of years. And then we offset that with some of the positive variances we saw in property tax collections, and also in investment income. We budgeted about $1.6 million for investment income. We believe that it'll come in higher than that it has in prior years. We've kept it conservative because interest rates have come down, but we know that the controller's been very aggressive in her investment assumptions and making sure that we're getting a return on all of the cash that we have in our banks, and she's been working hard with all our banks. So between all of those variances, it comes to, like I said, the 723.
Good.
Is that
No comment.
your presentation in regards to the October month?
For the October report, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate that. Very concise. We'll now open it up to questions from colleagues about the monthly financial report. Questions from colleagues? It's still early on in the fiscal year, just entering the second quarter now, or coming toward the end of the second quarter. Questions from colleagues about the monthly financial report? Olga Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for clarification, mostly you mentioned so last year we budgeted higher for vacancy savings because we had more vacancies.
I'm not sure that we budgeted for it, but we ended up with more vacancy savings than what was budgeted. It's hard to get it. I mean, we can calculate and get closer to what we think we actually will have in vacancy savings because of, we do include in our monthly report a list of all the vacancies, and you do see a dollar amount. And the dollar amount was quite high. However, we don't expect to see, that high. I'm trying to turn the page so I can share it with you. Well, I didn't bring this down, but I'll just speak to it, I suppose. There was about $11 million if you took all the vacancies and you added up all those salaries. That's not the actual number we're going to see, because part of it was, if you recall, we approved the nurses contract. So that was about $2.5 million. So right off the top, because we can't hire that many nurses, we're going to pay 2.5 in the contract for nurses. And there's also overtime. We have vacancies in police and fire. There's usually overtime associated with that. So we do keep a careful track of how many vacancies there are. We do it on a weekly basis. We meet with HR, and we do have a sense of what's happening there. We think based on what we're seeing, the 1.6 million dollars in, no, 1.5, excuse me, in vacancy savings, was conservative. We think there'll be more.
I mean, we don't want that many vacancies, and that's why I'm asking, because what happens though, I mean, we have to be careful, and I know we get the monthly updates with that number, because hopefully we're also hiring.
We are working hard to hire as much as we can, yes.
So that's why I saw, last year, what was 6 million?
Yeah.
And now it's 2.3, and I looked at that as a positive because we're
Oh, yes.
hiring.
It does depend on how you're looking at it. In some way, it's cushioned within the budget, but is it ideal? No, because I can tell you as someone who works in the city, we need people to do these important jobs. It'll cut down on police overtime, fire overtime. I don't think, we don't want this level of attrition, and we're working hard to hire, and we're doing our best. And our office currently is interviewing for quite a few positions, so, but when there is savings, it does provide budgetary cushion.
No doubt,
Yeah.
and I think my colleagues on this committee know that, I'm a stickler with that stuff. But again, I just wanted clarification, because hopefully we are hiring, and that number will fluctuate depending on who gets hired and who actually leaves as well, because we also have retirements and people who just move on to other jobs. Okay, so thank you for that clarification. And then you mentioned, okay, then there was the police contract, which we expected that to happen, but you mentioned you added additional funding to that line item. So
For which one?
the contract reserve.
Oh, yes.
So here it's 1.1 million, but you mentioned something about 1.7.
Right, so we spent the 1.7, and then we used another 1.1 to get to the 2.8 million. We presented before what the contract would cost, and there was a retro payment that we could pay, the first payment within the first 30 days, the second payment within, 18 months?
2 months.
Yeah, so the $2.8 million was, I included that in this projection.
Okay, but we're good there as far as covering the contracts.
I believe so, yes, at this point, we should be between some of the positive revenues and some of the expenditure savings. So far, we are in a, for this point of the year, we're in a solid position, and we're going to keep tracking.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Further questions from colleagues about the monthly financial report? Alder Furlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Good evening. Just very quickly looking at page 3. So under September, all the departments are not showing a surplus or a deficit. October on your sheet, just as an accounting question, this means that everything came in as expected?
Yeah, so we do projections on a monthly basis, and when you first start out the year, you really don't have enough information to go off. I'm assuming we're going to hit the budgeted number in my projections until I see otherwise. And so, for instance, with the investment income, and talking to the controller and finding out how well our accounts are doing, you project out that you say, I think we're going to beat the number we have in our budget. And so that's where these numbers, you start to adjust them because you have more information. So
the only thing that kind of caught my attention is the parking meters and parking tags.
oh yes,
And so those coming in as projected is what you're stating, or?
at this point, with the information that I have, I did not change those projections.
Okay.
We can look at the November report is going to come out, and we're going to look closely at that and see if we need to change that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Furlow. Further questions from colleagues about the monthly financial report? Further questions from colleagues? I have a couple of questions. And I'm glad you brought up the police contract because, of course, we voted on it recently, we approved it, but it has a significant financial impact. And at some point, we're going to need to do some further budget housekeeping.
Yes.
All the position amounts in the current budget are now incorrect. And I'm wondering about the overtime expenditures, what those estimates would be. I don't know if you've talked with your colleagues in police department about that. What can you say at this point about how what kind of increase are you gonna need for that overtime budget?
We recently created an overtime dashboard. We focus mostly on police and fire, and public works. And, we are looking at, certainly, we're gonna need more funding. The amount, at this point, I'm working with my colleagues to determine how much more we think that, could increase, especially given the salary increases. Today, I did share, have some back and forth with the police department about the increases, the salary increases that they're building into their budget. We did send out our budget letters to all the departments. The departments are working on their FY 25-26 budgets. And they are to submit their budget proposals by December 23rd. So we're having a lot of back and forth, talking about the numbers and talking about what those impacts will be. A lot of analysis is going on right now, and we'll be able to report, significantly more to you as the next monthly report comes out and as those discussions continue. But we are keeping an eye on overtime. We did do, like I said, an analysis to figure out where that's going for the rest of the year, and it's something we're going to pay careful attention to.
So I would just note that, of course, if we project more in vacancy savings than we had budgeted for, that's disappointing, and from a staffing perspective.
Yes.
From a budget perspective, it has the benefit of helping to cover up other places where we have more money, more expenditures.
Yes.
But at some point, we'll have to do the budget amendments and the transfers to make sure that our budget lines up with how things are shifting.
Yes.
Right, so we're expecting vacancy savings to go up. We could amend that at the very end of the year with the kind of the large transfer we do at the end of the year,
Yes.
but we might want to do it sooner than that.
Yes.
And I'm just constantly thinking about that police contract with the large increase in the base pay rates for those positions, existing and new positions. Those all need to be, like right now, our budget is incorrect.
Yeah.
Because those are last year's, or pre-settlement rates. So I guess I'm just encouraging you to think through, when will you, the administration that is,
Right.
come back to us with some amendments to clean things up, because a lot changed with that contract being settled.
Well, as the budget documents come in, I think we're gonna have a lot more granularity. We'll be able to see a lot more. We'll be able to share a lot more. I think I'm working on the November report and building in some of those assumptions into those estimates, because at the end of October, the contract had not been approved at that point, so it'll show up in the November, so we'll have a really good sense of what the rest of the year is going to look like. And we, at that point, there's still early enough in the year where we could make adjustments if we need to, cut back on discretionary spending, things like that. But we haven't gotten to that point yet, but the analysis is going on right now.
Because if I recall correctly, the number we came to was $6.8 million.
Yes.
The fiscal impact of that contract on this fiscal year.
Yes.
Because we took out the retro payment 18 months ago.
That's correct, yeah.
So I don't think we have additional $6.8 million in savings elsewhere. So that means that we're likely looking at a deficit. We would need to see some kind of belt tightening elsewhere in the city in order to absorb that $6.8 million impact. And so at some point, we will want to hear more about how we're going to do that.
Yes.
Yeah, we will put in expenditure constraints on people. If it gets to that level, we've done it previous years, we'll definitely do that again.
We're trying, I would like to tell you that one of the things that were included in the budget were the $1.3 million in savings in debt service from the bond refunding. We successfully completed that last week. We will see those savings, and we will see $10.8 million in savings over the life of those bonds with no extension of maturity. So we were able to hit that target. That was very important that we hit that.
That's great. So 1.3 million for this fiscal year and
10.8 all
for the life.
the whole.
Great. Well, that's really great. Glad to hear that.
That was a lot of work, Shannon and Dr. St. Perry on that one.
Great. Further questions from colleagues on the October monthly report for second-time holder Furlow?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just need to follow through with the parking and tax because we lost a boatload of money during COVID and even after COVID because we weren't tagging, we weren't ticketing. I think the towing company does come through, or at least it did through your office. Have we secured a contract with a towing company, to your knowledge?
You know, it's not something that I've been focused on. I can get you that information and get it back to you.
I'm not pushing for one.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if we have one. So through you, Mr. Chair, we can have that follow-up.
So noted.
Thank you.
Further questions from colleagues on the October monthly financial report? Seeing none, we will move to the next item, which is the comprehensive report from fiscal year 22-23. And that is also the two of you.
Yes, it is. I don't have to stay.
I have a quick question. Do we have someone from RSM to go over the federal and state compliance reports?
We do not have someone here.
Okay. Are you guys prepared to go over those reports?
We are.
Okay.
If there's more information that you need, we can bring them in.
Okay. Typically, they come to this meeting, so I was a little bit surprised not to see them. So, okay. Why don't you hand out the paper you need?
Yes, so this is, I like handouts, visuals.
Sure, thank you.
This is what we presented to the rating agencies.
Why don't you let us get all the
Oh, I'm
papers,
sorry.
and then we'll proceed. Thank you so much. Right on, okay. All right, please proceed.
Yes. So in doing, completing the bond refunding, we had meetings with rating agencies. I'd like to point out that we were upgraded by Fitch recently, and we have a positive outlook from Moody's. And this was part of the presentation that we gave. And the first page kind of shows the trend since 2017. As you can see, it's a very positive trend, and this is, the rating agencies have acknowledged this. I just wanted to point that out. And then the final to 2023, the bar there at the end shows what the fund balance was on a GAAP accounting basis. It was $56.8 million at the end of 2023. So I just wanted to point that out. And then
Could you remind us about that accounting standard that you mentioned?
Oh, sure. So when we do the monthly reports, we do it on a budgetary basis, which is basically almost like a checkbook. You see the revenues coming in, you see the expenditures going out. And so that's how we track throughout the year. At the end of the year, we have the auditors come in and they then look at our finances and they record it on what they call a GAAP basis, which is, you know, lots of accounting treatments that will change the number slightly. And the reason why I bring it up is because if you look at the audited number and then you look at what what we projected in the 2024 pre-audit report, you know, the numbers are not the same. And that's because with the GAAP accounting, there's things like accruals are in there that we haven't accounted for. And then some revenues that we know they're coming, but they haven't come in yet, some things like that, you know, they're booked. Those will also show up in GAAP accounting. So that's why it's more positive on the GAAP side than it is on the budgetary basis side. So you'll see the fund balance is a little bit higher based on the audit.
And would you just remind us what the acronym stands for?
Generally accepted accounting principles.
So it's double A. Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
You don't have to say that.
Okay, so then the next page is some of the highlights, like why did we have such a large surplus in 2023? Revenues exceeded budget by about $50 million. There was $7.3 million increase in local taxes, $5.7 million increase in investment income, and additional gains from license permits, fees, and other taxes that have returned to more pre-pandemic levels after a brief decline. The city achieved about $5.1 million in vacancy savings over what was budgeted, which helped offset, there was a settled labor contract and some one-time payments. So that offset that, and the budget had allocated, as we know, it's $5.5 million in ARPA. Well, this is for 2023, excuse me, $5 million in ARPA. which was not utilized. So that's what led to the positive results for 2023. And then the last slide is where we were at the end of 2024. This is the pre-audit report. This is right out of Munis. No special accounting treatment. So based on this, we saw a $16.36 million surplus in the general fund. The $3 million assigned fund balance, which was approved for the Board of Education. So it's still in the fund balance, it's still in the general fund on the city side, but you know, those funds have been segregated to themselves there. And then you see the litigation fund. We paid the settlement for the Cox settlement. $15 million was the city's portion. So you can see that coming out at the end of the year with $1.7 million in ending fund balance in the litigation fund. And then the medical fund and the workers' compensation fund were positive. So you see all in, the fund balance, cumulative fund balance was $56.9 million. On a GAAP accounting basis, all these funds are rolled into one. On a budgetary basis, they are not. So that's another treatment. That's another reason for the difference. So when you see the general fund as a $50 million fund balance, on a budgetary basis, that's really probably going to be more equivalent to the 56.9 because the accountants will roll that all up into one. And that, I'm ready to answer any questions. I have the other with me in case there's more detail.
Thank you for that presentation and for these highlights. Positive results in a number of ways. The queue is open for questions from colleagues about the comprehensive financial report for fiscal year 22-23. I'll give my colleagues a moment to gather their thoughts and their questions. Questions on the comprehensive financial report? I will ask one while my colleagues are thinking it over. I see in your presentation that you put forward a target of 10% as an ultimate goal for
Informal goal.
an informal. Okay. What informed that informal goal?
Well, the GFOA recommends that most local governments maintain fund balance of at least 2 months of expenditures, about 16, which typically is about 16%. 16% is a pretty high number. I mean, we've not been even close, we're not even at 10% now. So 16% for New Haven, we feel would be ideal. We would love to get there. We don't think that's realistic for a variety of reasons. For, you know, all the things that the city's investing in, some, you know, political reasons, you know, we have needs, we need to fund them. So to think that we could go beyond 10%, 10% is even going to be an ambitious goal. But we've set this goal because we think it would provide the city cushion in case there was an economic downturn. We saw a decline in revenues, in case we received less in grant revenue. It's a good number to provide cushion to the general fund and to the city operations. It's a target. You know, you have to strive for something, and we think if we can keep the expenditures under control and manage our budget and monitor overtime and discretionary spending, we think it's a realistic goal. Slightly ambitious, but it's something, you know, we'd like to strive for.
We're at 8% now.
Yes.
56 million. Okay. So the percentage point tick up would be another 14 million, $1.4 million, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that information. Questions from colleagues? Alder Furlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks again for your presentation and making these numbers make sense to us. The 7.3 million increase in local taxes, what would we attribute that to? Things that have come online or
Some of
the
it
increase in our mill rate?
was increase in,
Will it be, is it, or maybe it's a little bit of all of that, the increase in our mill rate as well as
oh, that,
tax abatements that are now have come online, or,
well, the millage rate was built into our projection in the budget. But if we look at the budget to actual results for 2023, we had budgeted $152.8 million in property taxes, and it came at 255. Personal property was budgeted at 26.2. It came at 27.6, 27.7 if round up. So motor vehicles came in a little bit under. So those were the main drivers. We just saw, better collections on the property taxes, some delinquencies were paid. And the same personal property as well. We just saw some uptick there as well.
increase in public property
Yeah,
taxes?
personal property, yep.
Do we have any, well, do you know if we have anything that has come online last year that is now paying taxes that currently wasn't before under an
I do.
abatement?
We have an analysis. We did share it with the rating agencies. I don't have it in my head right now. I can certainly share that.
Might be a good piece of information to have in our portfolio, Mr. Chair, through you. I make that request.
So noted.
And thank you.
Thank you, Alder Turner. Next in the queue is Alder Festa, and the queue is open.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just curious to know if the auditors had any concerns when reviewing our documents, and if so, what were they, and what is the plan to move forward?
Oh, sure. That would get into the compliance. Did you want me to talk about the compliance?
Well, we should stick with,
Yeah.
we should stick with the comprehensive report
Okay.
and then get into that next.
Yes. Well, they audit, at the front of every audit, there'll be a letter from the auditor that says that it presents fairly and it abides by GAAP accounting rules. And this year is no different. When the auditor signs off on it, they put a letter at the front that talks about that it's presented fairly and it does follow GAAP accounting standards. So as far as what's presented in here, the auditor is signed off. We provided them all of the information. They did all their due diligence and all their work. And so we have full confidence in the numbers in this report, in this audit.
Okay. Just regarding, now we have, maybe I might be confusing it with something else, the excess, the operating results excess, the deficiency of 16 million.
Oh, yes. So in this,
Yeah, go ahead.
oh, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
So if in our audit, there was an assigned fund balance of $15 million, we had talked, much like we did with the $3 million for the Board of Education, we thought there's this liability out there. Well, we knew there was this liability out there. We need to make sure that we have the funds set aside. And so in our audit, you could see assigned fund balance for legal settlement of $15 million. So that was a planned draw. And so if you look at this report, it says we had a $16.36 million general fund surplus. When you actually look at it across the board, when you do the full roll-up, it was actually $1.87 million because that takes into account that $15 million that came out of the fund balance.
Okay, so it does, okay. And I guess that's where I was a little confused. Okay, thanks for that clarification.
So that's why we're not projecting a much bigger general fund balance at the end of 2024. It'll be slightly larger.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Further questions from colleagues on the comprehensive financial report for 22-23? Seeing none, let's move next into the federal and state compliance reports for that same fiscal year. After this presentation and after questions from colleagues, we'll have the public will have an opportunity to weigh in on these matters.
So one of the biggest issues we had with the audit was the audit was late. It was significantly late. And the biggest reason why it was late was because of the cyber attack. And it's listed as the number two finding in the report. And we know, we have that situation where there was the cyber attack, and there was a draw of $5.9 million that the city has been working to recover, and we've recovered most of it. There's still a little bit of funding that we're working with the federal government to recover. But as the auditors were doing their work, they were concerned that they didn't have the whole story about the site. And so we had to give them more information, and we did. And then as a part of that analysis, after that occurred, the controller's been working to tighten up all the policies. She actually stopped all ACH, all wire transfers. It is working with vendors to strengthen those procedures and processes to make sure that it's much tighter. We've cleaned up Munis, so people who need access to certain functions have access, particularly in the financial, all the people who work in finance and budget. So there's been a lot of steps since then to correct things. We have solid cybersecurity insurance. There's training required with the cybersecurity. We do testing, phishing testing to see if people could check, could identify fraudulent emails. So since that time, the city has done quite a bit to really strengthen this, our cybersecurity procedures and our financial procedures. But that was part of the reason why they showed that finding, because we did have that incident, and we did need to provide the auditors assurance that we had taken control and were putting procedures in place, and to give them all the information they needed so that they felt comfortable that this audit met all of the requirements under GAAP accounting. There were some other
If you could give a highlight of what the issues are. I'm glad you started with that one, because that's a big one. But there's usually a list of items of minor concern, items of less concern. So go through that with us.
Sure. So within, I don't have it in my memory. Okay. So on page 13, there was finding material weakness, finding one, material weakness, internal controls over change of vendor payment information.
So that's the 5.9.
So a wire went out to the wrong vendor because of not checking to make sure it was going to the correct vendor. And those were a lot of the procedures that I was talking about that the controllers really worked to tighten up along with IT. So that was a material weakness. Then there was one for significant deficiency and non-compliance under the assisted listing program, lead hazard reduction grant program. And so it was, based on our testing of required quarterly and annual reports, we determined the annual report was not submitted as required. So we've been having, we've had many meetings to talk about, how these grants are administered. Ron and oversees a lot of the grants. The health department is responsible for the operating portion of this grant. So we do meet with them to try to ensure that they smooth out the process. Is there anything you'd like to say?
So this year, they were having difficulty accessing the reporting system that HUD uses. Not an excuse, but that's part of the reason why this was delayed. They do have some new people over there as well, so training was an issue. Also on that one, they've had a lot of staff turnover in this grant. So that's the main finding there. And then, again, the recommendation, the city implement controls to ensure compliance requirements are complied, as well as contact the grantor about the delinquent reports should still be filed. Okay, and then basically, there were some other issues with the health department with that lead grant. And I mean, this is a minor one. They're looking for the assistance listing number. HUD is very specific on numbers. We've had findings on a contract because we didn't list the grant number on the contract. So it was a finding, and we have a corrective action plan. We do include those grant numbers on contracts, so that is what that is referring to.
What about the late audit?
Oh, yeah, that was back here. That was actually number 3.
Significant deficiency in compliance finding late issuance of the 2023 and 2022 single audit reporting package. This is due, our single audit reporting package is due on January 31st. Our accounting team is working with RSM to ensure that this is done on time. We are committed to getting our audit out on time. We have contracted out with an accounting firm who is now supporting the accounting department. There were quite a few vacancies in the accounting department, which has been a problem, and we're really trying to solve that. But in the meantime, we've hired an accounting firm to support and to make sure that this audit gets out on time this year. It's very important that it gets out this year. There could be some consequences from the state if it is not. So we're ensuring that we do everything we can to get it done.
And then the last finding for the lead grant again is there's a system, it's called the SAM.gov, System for Award Management, where contractors, nonprofit agencies, anybody receiving federal funds needs to register on this SAM.gov website. And we do check to see if anyone is suspended or debarred from receiving federal funds. HUD felt that we didn't take that far enough to check for that, so there was another implementation of a process to verify verification for SAM.gov. So going forward, we are doing that more critically.
Okay. Any other information you'd like to give from this report from RSM?
No, questions, and if we can answer them, we will get answers.
Thank you very much. Questions from colleagues on the state and federal compliance report from RSM for fiscal year 22-23. Alder Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just thank you for your report. I'm sure you have a lot of numbers in your head, and some don't make sense and some do. But what doesn't make sense to me is, HUD, you mentioned HUD making excuses, but it's still our responsibility to make sure that we're running the city proficiently. So I know you mentioned that there are things in place that you're going to move forward with to help compensate for that, but what is HUD going to do? I mean, are they going to comply? Because we count on them too to give the information.
Oh, it's more our compliance.
It's our compliance.
We need to comply. Just stronger compliance with HUD. And again, they are very specific. Even with our ARPA contracts, we're including the CFDA number, the Catalog Federal Domestic Assistance number, the grant award number. Even on our Munis system, we have to put that CFDA number on our general ledger. So they're very specific with that. So there hasn't been a financial penalty for this. So just going forward, we need to add these additional controls.
Now, who is responsible for putting that information into the database? It's not your, it would have to start from the department.
Yeah, that's the health department.
So it would be the health department. And it sounds like it's mostly some of the concerns mostly with the health department. And I think you mentioned you sat down with them and met
Yes.
with them
Yeah.
and communicated the concerns, because, I mean, we can't afford to have deficiencies,
Right.
which would affect our ratings in the long run, and bonding and funding, and, I don't need to tell you, you know more than I do. So I'm just wondering how often does the health department need to report this?
This one, there is a quarterly report, and then there's a annual report. But it's both. They do a financial report and they do a programmatic report. So they are doing that timely. They just hired a new person over there who I have been meeting with them consistently, a lot, bringing her up to speed on federal grants and compliance.
And when is the next quarterly due, at the end of the year?
I don't recall. I think it might be the end of January for December.
Okay, so end of January for December.
Yeah, for
Okay.
December.
Mr. Chair, maybe through you, we can get an update at that time to make sure that departments are complying. Especially since, it could be part of the financial report as well, possibly, just to make sure that, I don't like micromanaging, but we need to make sure that departments are following certain protocol.
Thank you, Alder Festa. I think what we'll consider is what's the appropriate follow-up to the issues that were flagged in this compliance report, including Department of Health, including obviously the work that the comptroller is doing to review our transaction processes. So I think some update on that will be appropriate. So we can figure that out.
So for
Going into the next budget cycle.
For the SAM.gov, for the department, purchasing does have that in place now, so that has been put in place.
Okay, and that's purchasing.
Yeah, purchasing is involved in that.
And just, what, you mentioned consequences from the state. What are the consequences?
For late budget, more oversight. They would just provide more oversight to make sure that our reports were done.
So they would micromanage.
A little bit, yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
And I take that not to be the hope for outcome.
No.
That might not be comfortable, is the implication from your words and body language. Thank you, Alder Festa. Further questions from colleagues? Alder for our Santana.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, and I have a question regarding the, normally in that report, they also give you a deadline, don't they, as to when they're looking for the completion of these results?
The audit?
Yeah.
Yes.
And what date is that?
Oh, they're working on it now. We've been submitting information to them. We were waiting, their contract we had to get all the contracting in place. But we've contracted not only with RSM for the audit, we've contracted with Clifton Larson, which is an accounting firm. And so there's a big exchange of information going on right now.
Okay. And the procedures, do they, have they also been submitted to the audit committee to see if they were approved or not? How is that process?
Oh, how
with
the
them?
auditor was approved?
Yeah.
They are under contract. We've been using them for some time. Their contract is in place. We did renew it for another year. And now
This is the last year of the contract, isn't it?
yes, and then we'll RFP.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I've seen many of them, and generally they do have a deadline. And generally they also give recommendations, and they want to see follow-up on it. And yeah, with companies, they find you. With state agencies, local governments, I wasn't sure. Thanks for Alder Festa for saying that. For asking that question, because I wasn't sure what that would be. So I'm hoping that we've got all our checks and balances in place so that we do not have to have their physical oversight on these projects. that we're doing or updating in our reports. And they issue it once a year, right? Or they do it every 6 months.
The audit once a year.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Is that all, Alder Farrar Santana?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Further questions from colleagues about the federal and state compliance report? Further questions from colleagues on this report? Seeing none, we thank you. We're going to pause for a moment and ask for public testimony before we move to the next item. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have just heard the October monthly financial report, the comprehensive financial report for fiscal year 22-23, and the federal and state compliance report for fiscal year 22-23. Would anyone from the public wish to testify on any of those items? And for a second time, would anyone from the public wish to testify on any of those items? And for a third time, anyone from the public who wishes to testify on those items, please come forward. Seeing none, we'll proceed with the next item on our agenda, which is item number 7, interdepartmental MOUs in regards to the $5.5 million in ARPA funds recently reallocated to the Board of Education. Who's going to come and talk about that? I made you go sit down and now you get to come back. A little bit of exercise. I'll just remind colleagues that we recently voted on a bundle of interdepartmental MOUs in order to obligate already allocated ARPA funds. We didn't want to miss any deadline and potentially lose those monies. So when we reallocated the $5.5 million from last year's budget, which was not needed, to the Board of Ed for physical work on the school buildings, it was important to get those monies obligated right away, which is what the proposal is before us. Names and addresses for the record, please. And why don't we take one of those mics and swing it around that way, so that everybody should be set. Thank you. We'll start with you and then this way.
Ron Gizzi, 219 Rainbow Terrace, Hamden.
Linda Hannon, 210 Osborne Avenue, New Haven.
Shannon McHugh, 925 Roanoke Road, Waterbury, Connecticut.
Jamar Lane, 80 Polk Court, Fairfield, Connecticut.
Please.
So this is the memorandum of understanding. You've probably seen it before for many other of the MOUs that we've been doing. This fulfills our obligation or our requirement to obligate all of our funds by the end of December this year, so that we can utilize, if we don't have them obligated by the end of this year, we will lose the funding. So this, we worked diligently with consultants to ensure that we're following the guidelines from the federal government, and this does conform to those guidelines. And so we've already talked about the $5.5 million. It was originally allocated for revenue replacement in the general fund. It was not needed. Given that it was not needed in the general fund, we came to the Board of Alders to transfer these funds to the Board of Education so that they could use it to fund capital expenditures to improve the schools, which is allowable under ARPA regulations. And so this document provides more of the detail. I know at some prior meetings, there was more detail required, but at the time with the Board of Education had not allocated the funds, and now we have an overview of how these funds will be allocated. If you were to look at, does everyone have a copy?
So we have some material in our packet, but we don't actually have the draft MOU in our packet. I don't believe we do. We have some spreadsheets, we have a summary document, but we have a memo from Linda Hannons So is that what you're referring to?
This one is the memorandum of understanding.
Right, which we recognize from prior submissions, but which we don't have in the packet that's in front of us right now.
Okay. Should we make some copies of this? This was included in the submission.
If we can get copies of it and submit it, that would be great. Thank you.
Would you like me to wait or speak to it?
Please continue.
Okay. So what is, a lot of this is just to comply with the federal requirements, and it talks about the subaward, and the fact that the funds have to be spent and obligated by the end of this year, and then all spent down by December 31st, 2026. On page, well, you don't have a page, so I'll just read it. So the funding is intended to provide, that was the heading, it says on November 18th, 2024, the City of New Haven Board of Alders approved a reallocation of previously allocated ARPA funds in the amount of $5,500,000 for the use of the Board of Education for school facilities capital improvement. The first project is an HVAC replacement. The dollar amount was $1.9 million. It says many systems are old and beyond their useful life, creating both health and environmental hazards in the schools. There's an additional $1.5 million for HVAC upgrades. HVAC controls in many school locations cannot be managed and balanced using the building management system and require hardware and software upgrades to keep the cooling and heating systems up and running optimally. There's another $185,000 allocated to auditorium floors and other repairs due to seasons of high humidity, moisture buildup, and creating mold growth in the schools, especially in areas with carpets, both a health and environmental issue. The older carpet installations also are experiencing buckling of materials, creating tripping hazards. So it's removal of carpet, installation of non-porous flooring is necessary to maintain a healthy and safe environment. There's $217,000 for library floors. Again, due to seasons of high humidity, moisture buildup, and creates mold growth in the schools, especially in areas with carpet, both a health and environmental issue. The older carpet installations are also experiencing buckling and material creating tripping hazards. Removal of carpet and installation of non-porous flooring is necessary to maintain health and safety environments. Then there's $225,000 for DHW heaters. Hot water heaters provide tempered water for kitchen operations and hand washing. Many of the hot water systems are beyond their life expectancy and either failed beyond economical repair or obsolete. Hot water is vital to an environment with expectations of health requirements. Then there's $420,000 for doors. There's not too many, should I? I'll just keep going.
Please. I'll just note that some of this information we have in our packet, I think it's just a different form and format than what you're reading from.
Okay.
But we have some of this information in the form of a memo and a spreadsheet and some commentary. But you're actually referring to the actual MOU,
Yes.
which we're going to get copies of here. But some of this information is familiar to us because we read it just in a different form.
That's my stuff. I don't want to be redundant, but I'll just
Please.
The doors, $420,000. Functioning fire and egress doors are required by federal and state codes and New Haven public school policy. Many fire and or egress doors do not open, fail to latch, or are compromised to the point of not meeting code requirements due to either wear or vandalism. Properly operational fire and or egress doors are mandatory and necessary for safety and security. $15,000 for an ejector system. Failed water ejector systems create potential for sewage backup within school buildings. Currently, there are several underperforming or failing ejector systems, which creates health and environmental concerns for the affected school. Then there's $250,000 for fire alarm panels and devices. Many of the fire alarm systems are obsolete and beyond life expectancy and need to be replaced to ensure school building and occupants have the appropriate fire safety protection. $22,000 for PA systems. PA systems provide necessary communication regarding fire, environmental, and safety concern and events. Many of the PA systems are as old as the building in which they are installed and therefore obsolete and in need of replacement. It is essential that these systems are fully functional during drills and actual emergencies so that the students, teachers, and staff are informed and receive clear instruction. There's $200,000 for bathroom repairs. Bathroom fixtures, district-wide faucets, sinks, toilets, etc. are either broken or do not function due to wear or vandalism. Functioning bathroom fixtures are necessary to provide a clean and healthy environment for students, teachers, and staff. $100,000 for stairwell treads. Damaged stairwell treads and landings create a serious safety issue for staff, students, and visitors. Several people have reported falling or having near fall experiences walking stairs with compromised stair treads and or landings. $170,000 in playground repairs. Many of the playgrounds have playscapes and broken components or compromised ground surfacing, creating unsafe conditions for students. Additionally, these areas of concern require addressing under the Consumer Product Safety Commission Public Playground Safety Program. $200,000 for roof repairs. Several schools have leaking roofs that are over 20 to 30 years old and are beyond maintaining with minor surfacing repairs. Also, the compromised roofs do not maintain optimal heating and cooling. Roofing conditions are part of creating a safe and healthy environment. Windows, vandalism, and weather anomalies cause broken windows, $50,000 for windows. Cause broken windows throughout the district that require timely replacement. Broken windows impact building temperature as well as security. So you can see it's all about making sure the schools are safe, both from an environmental perspective and from events and things of that nature. Let's see. So this MOU, like I said, the rest of it is like, it breaks out how we are complying with all the federal regulations. And by approving this MOU, we will secure these funds so that they can be obligated and used for the benefit of New Haven schools.
Thank you. And as colleagues take a moment to review the written material we just received, which some of which you just read for us, thank you for that. Perhaps Ms. Hennons could say a little bit more about the discussions that took place within the Board of Ed, presumably in the Finance and Operations Committee, where you fine-tuned what your plans are for this money, how those discussions go, what were the principles that guided them on deciding on these particular projects.
And I'm going to defer to Jamar because they work together on a team to put these things together.
And we got your name and address, but it'd be great for us to know your role and function within the Board of Ed.
Absolutely, with my pleasure. Jamar Lane, I currently am in the role of Executive Director of Facilities for New Haven Public Schools. I've been there since March of 2023. I work for AV Industries, so I'm here in a management role in that particular role to assist schools as they are moving forward with their facilities improvements. So the discussions for this went along with the Chief Operating Officer's office and the Department of Finance. We were requested to put together a plan for $5.5 million using the priorities that we've identified based on work orders, based on conditions that we found in schools, based on safety issues that we've identified, right, that we've discussed either with the teachers union, with principals, things that have been brought up by the Board of Education themselves, and also with the guidance of the superintendent and what her intention for the district was. So one of our major concerns, of course, every season since I've been here has been the HVAC systems, right? Keeping the schools cool, keeping them warm in the wintertime. There's a challenge every season since I've been here. That's why there is such a large number of dollars that have been allocated to that particular area. There are schools that were identified previously that needed major upgrades and also ones that needed major replacements. You have certain types of refrigerants, right, that are now outdated and no longer able to be used and or sourced. So we have rooftop units that need to be replaced. So those are listed on the spreadsheet, as well as across the district, other things that we know that needs to be done. So that portion was mainly guided by the manager of HVAC, of course, who manages all of the issues with HVAC in the district, as he was preparing a prioritization document for us to review to determine how dollars are going to be spent over the next 3 years. And we use that as a guide to what we want to allocate to fund the $5.5 million request. In addition to that, going along with safety, which was the theme for this, we then identified stuff like stair treads that were reported already. We recently had some mold issues after the summertime, which is when the high humidity happens in the schools. This particular summer was the highest humidity we've had apparently in quite some time, as I understand it. And so we had several areas, especially libraries, where there were some mold issues where we had to spend quite a bit of money on remediation. And so in order to prevent that, we need to go ahead and replace some of the carpet that's been there over 20 years, right? And put down LVP because that's what creates the mold growth, right? And so we wanted to make sure we prioritize things like that to keep the children safe and the staff safe and the visitors safe, as well as auditorium floors that we've identified that have been buckling and brought about safety issues at locations like Cross, excuse me, and other schools. In addition to that, fire alarm systems that we've identified over the last couple of years as part of the stewardship report that needs to be replaced. We decided to prioritize those that we knew really need to have devices to be upgraded to prevent false alarms, which we've had, and also to ensure that the devices were properly working. So that is the crux of the majority of it. And let me not forget the fire doors and egress doors, which are a problem in a lot of schools due to either the age of them, especially at the high schools, or vandalism or just damage to the doors themselves. Career high school alone, the last estimate that we got went anywhere from between $60,000 to $75,000 to replace or repair the doors that are there. And so it's some of those major repairs that we need in some of these schools, where you have the majority of the doors that are egress and fire doors that need some sort of service, is where we're focusing this large part. And then there's district-wide money for doors that go over Wexler Grant, where some of the outside doors are damaged and need to be repaired in terms of the locking systems for lockdown purposes. So we had that conversation along with security as well to find out what their focus was for lockdown purposes, and principals to determine what they felt were issues within the district as it relates to security. And together, that's how we developed this $5.5 million. Obviously, I could probably spend $50 million, but it's 5.5 at this point in time. And so we prioritized based on the knowledge we had with the requests, the failures, and the concerns that have been expressed over the last 2 years.
Thank you, appreciate that further description. Any more information you'd like to give us on this item? Thank you very much for the presentation. We'll now have questions from colleagues on this proposed interdepartmental MOU. Alder Freda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. I think you may have said it, but I didn't catch it because I was reading. The difference between HVAC replacement and upgrade.
Sure, I can further explain that. So replacement would be usually rooftop units or whole systems. Most of what we've identified are rooftop units, which are basically packaged units on a rooftop, and they service a particular portion of the school. If we're going to replace it, it's because the components or the refrigerant are no longer available. Most likely the refrigerant, right? R22 has been phased out and it's not available anymore, and we can no longer use that refrigerant for our system. So if we have to refrigerate out, we have to then probably replace the system because we can't fill it with the refrigerant any longer. Or if we source it, it's going to be a one-time thing that we can find a stockpile someplace and it's extremely expensive. So replacement is the option that we need for those particular units. The upgrades, we have many of our schools that are on a building management system. The building management system is basically a system where there's a computer, and what it does, it communicates with all of the HVAC controls, and we're able to say, okay, well, it's 73 in this room, it's 52 in this room, let's take a look at what the problem is, and we can fix it from a computer, or the computer controls that environment where they basically change the temperature at night in order to save money, start it up again in the morning like you do your own home, right? And so it creates efficiency and the ability to control from that environment. That is not working in many of the schools. And so the upgrades are for the BMS system for us to do software and hardware upgrades, so we can then have full control of those systems. Because right now, if I have a problem in certain schools, I have to send out a vendor. And I got to spend that money to send a vendor there to do it live, on site, right? So it's already costing us money, and it's not efficient at all. And that one vendor can't be at every school. So if I've got 20 schools that have this problem, right, there may be someone that has to wait to the end of the day. And so if it's cold in the room, they wait until the end of the day for someone to show up, where if the system was working properly, not only would we manage it, but we'd be able to make changes right there on the spot from a computer system, which is how most systems should work. So that's what the upgrades are for.
Thank you. And my last question, just trying to stay trying to stay germane. There are several schools that are not listed that are in need of repairs. Are we, what's the plan outside of, what's the plan of getting some of these other schools fixed? And for example, I know the doors at Fairhaven don't lock. That's been a complaint for a while there, and I don't see that on the list of the doors.
So,
that's just one of the schools that just popped out to me.
Sure. So like Fairhaven has one door that there's a problem sometimes with, right? It seems to be an intermittent problem. So for smaller things like that, where it's going to be one door or two doors, that's what the district-wide money is for, right? You haven't identified that school specifically, but there isn't a large dollar amount allocated to that one particular school. So we made that column for district-wide money to take care of those smaller things that need to be done.
I stayed germane, Mr. Chair. You see that?
Sure did.
I don't know what that means, but I appreciate it.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Are there further questions from colleagues? Alder Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Just to follow up with my colleague regarding the HVAC, you need to replace some of the, you need to upgrade some of the HVAC monitoring systems.
Yes.
Why isn't that done routinely? And I only ask because I know, like, even in our capital budget citywide, there's always upgrades to IT stuff, upgrades to equipment, etc. Are we on some kind of a schedule for upgrades? Why weren't they done, I guess is the question.
Can you answer that? It specifically has to do with dollars. And so the capital budget, I think, which is what the superintendent kind of expressed to everyone. I had, I think, $4.6 million that was allocated to facilities this year for capital money. That wasn't enough to cover the contracts, let alone replacements. And so we had to cut contracts in order to be able to have money available for replacements and capital repairs. And so the answer is it's dollars. So it was identified several years ago to do a major upgrade for the BMS system from up to what they call Tritium, which is a system that we're using now. It's been identified for years, but it takes several $million to do so. And so we're doing the schools right now that we need the most. What I have listed is not even all the schools, right? It's not even everything that we need. And so the answer is dollars.
But we're failing somewhere here, because if it's dollars, we should be, the Board of Ed should be budgeting for those dollars to upgrade these systems. Just like when we look at the capital budget, you know, there are dollars allocated for upgrades, et cetera. So I guess I'm just not understanding why this is a big oversight. And I hope that that doesn't happen again, because this is costing us a lot of money down the road.
I'll leave it up to the CFO to answer.
We only have enough money to go around to do, so a lot of times we end up dealing with emergencies, which sometimes can eat up your whole pot of capital. And I think capital is we only get it like every 2 years. So it's just not enough.
I'm not going to harp on it because I don't want to get too out of control with it, but I think the message is there. We need to stay on top of it regardless. I mean, we have to budget for this stuff, or we're going to end up in the same predicament. How do work orders get submitted? You mentioned work orders that, one of my questions was where do these requests come from? And you answered that, but it says based on workload and work orders. But how is all that submitted? Is it electronically? Is it paper?
It's electronic. There was a previous 2 systems. One was last year that we used from a previous provider that became very outdated, and there was a bid that went out, or it was awarded based on, I believe, on a specialized funding agreement, right? To another vendor by the name of FMX. So it is an electronic work order system. The primary person that puts in the work orders are the building managers within the school, but the principals have accounts as well as anyone else that requests one. But the primary person, who is the front person for facilities, usually puts in the work order request. That work order request then gets viewed by the assistant director of maintenance, and then gets assigned by that person based on whether we're using in-house personnel which is very few of us, or a vendor.
And every school has this online process?
Yes.
And it's functioning? 'Cause
It's
it used to, how long has this been in place?
Since July.
Oh, so it's fairly new.
There was a previous one. It was there. It didn't work great, but it was there. This is the new approved system. And so it's as of July 1st, we put it in place.
Okay, again, I won't harp on it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get reprimanded in a minute.
Okay.
I will say, Jermaine, it's just, all of this does have to do with budgeting and how this money is being allocated. Roof, have we looked at warranties? Are any of the roofs under warranties? Generally, anything from like, sometimes if it's less than 20 years or 25 years, they're under warranty. Have we looked into that?
We have. You have to remember, a lot of the schools have not even had an upgrade in 20 years. And so a lot of the roofs that we're talking about are over 20 years old.
And what are generally the warranty time frame? Is it 20 years, 25 years, 30 years? What?
I don't know what the city does as a negotiation as part of that. I would assume that it would probably be anywhere between 10 to 20 years. But that's not something I can really answer. That would be a purchasing question.
But the warranties would be in the files with hopefully the Board of Ed or with our building department.
Correct. I mean, I wouldn't be able to answer it right here, right now, but I definitely can find out. We have files for the last, we have dates for all of the last upgrades on the schools, right? So if there's something that's below 20 years, we definitely take a look at the warranties or any documentation that's available to see if the warranty is available. So the answer is yes.
Okay, but we didn't find any warranties.
No. And so, for instance, like I said, a lot of the roofs that we're looking at here, they need replacement because they're over 20 years old.
Okay. And we have HVAC on here. Have we applied for additional grants for HVAC? Because there's been grants available.
Yes, so there was a grant that was applied for. I believe there were 5 schools that were listed. We were awarded money for 2, for a total of 3.8 million between the 2.
Yep.
The problem is that you have to pay the money up front and then request reimbursement.
Right, and
We
that was
talked about that
explained.
in the
Yeah,
last one.
yes.
Right,
And it sounded like the district was gonna include that in its capital request.
yes.
Yeah, and, you know, I guess I just want to make sure that we are applying for grant funding when it's available to us, because it helps us.
Correct. Yes, we decided that even with this funds here, instead of using that, because we could have just took the whole 3.2 and put it there, but to me, it wasn't the best bang for our buck. So I had recommended that instead we look at a lot of the smaller projects and get more done with these funds, as opposed to taking 2 projects, which would have left us not much to do anything with. And so we decided that looking at, with Jamar and his folks, looking at what was the best use of this money. So that's how we ended up with the big spreadsheet. But at least everybody's getting a piece of something.
Okay, so what was reviewed by Director McHugh is the 5.5 million, but then there's a page where it says current capital projects that have been submitted for finance and operations approved for the next capital budget. Is that what, this is separate
This is separate,
from this?
right? Because we sent out the capital budget letters to the departments, so we will get back their needs, what their priorities are, and that will be part of the capital budget for 2026.
Okay, so this page that I'm referring to, and I don't know if colleagues
It's in the packet.
saw it.
What page number is it?
But that's the memo.
If there isn't one.
Okay.
Fine.
That's the memo.
So
I think it's on-
Yeah.
It's an internal Board of Education memo. And it looks like a wish list for the next capital budget.
No, I can.
It hasn't been approved, obviously, because it hasn't been submitted to us yet.
I can provide some clarity.
Please.
So these are actually projects that have been submitted already for the current capital budget.
Current capital.
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
So these projects are already been approved and are either going through their process to receive a purchase order, or they've already got it.
Okay, so it's not are funded by fiscal year 24-25 capital budget. It's going towards, was it from 23-24 or?
No, this has already been encumbered as part of the
Okay,
24-25 budget, or
Okay.
some other source, like for instance, the flat bleachers replacement. There is some other dollars that are been identified for the flat building. I think it's somewhere around, what the dollar amount is. It's several $1 million that were identified for that particular building.
Right.
I guess we just wanted to highlight that these were not part of the $5.5 million. We've already identified funding for this. You haven't stopped working, basically, right? We're still doing things.
Okay, I appreciate that clarification because it could get a little confusing because this is the 5.5 million, but then in addition, there's all these other projects that have been going on using capital budget dollars.
And I believe there's also some narrative in these memos about ESSER funds that were also used for fiscal improvements.
Yes, sir.
Which would be other expenditures, not for this right now.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, and I'm sure this list is going to change as well for the next capital. All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Next on the queue is Alder Punza.
Thank you for that presentation. So ABM has been here since 2023?
I have been here since 2023.
And how long has facilities been outsourced? How many years?
Good question. I'm not sure. I would have to check.
So it's probably 4 or 5 years if.
Yeah, because it was
I reckon,
outsourced when
yeah,
I
so-
took the job.
So actually, facilities has been outsourced for, say, 5 or 6 years. So, I mean, the conditions that the school we're in this year, I mean, to say we really have to look at the outsource and, has it been working? If it's not working, how could it get better if we're going to continue to outsource facilities? So, I mean, it's really something to look at. My next question is, the 5.5 million, you listed all these things that actually need to be done. Will that 5.5 million be used for these specific things? Or, like Ms. Hannon said, if there's an emergency, will these funds be taken or are they just earmarked for these specific things to get done so that we can rest assured that the locking of doors are going to get done? Well, safety hazard or multiple of things that are going to be here. Can we?
Normally, always, with me anyway, the grants, whenever we get a grant and it lists specific things, those are the things that we do with those funds. We don't deviate unless we find that, like, say, the grant period is going to end and the vendor didn't do something or couldn't get the vendor. But then we would automatically ask for a budget revision. We would not just automatically say, okay, fine. No, I've run grants all my life, so.
Well, it's good to see that we know that the 5.5 million are going to correct some of the problems. Not all of them, obviously, but some of them. My last question is, who's going to oversee these projects that they get done? Do you have or is that your specific job to oversee, to make sure that the money is being spent appropriately for these projects so that we can rest assured that most of these projects will get done?
It's going to be a combination of facilities and finance. So finance is going to make sure that we spend the dollars where we're supposed to. And depending on the size of the project, it will determine who will be over it. If it's a project that's usually over $100,000 or $150,000, then a project manager will be assigned to that, because usually it means it's a large scope, there's a GC involved, there's a lot of stakeholder management that's involved, and so we'll handle it that way. If it's something that's smaller than that, it depends on the modality. So, the assistant director of maintenance will be handling a small fire alarm panel replacement, or he'll go back and check to make sure the devices were checked. If it's HVAC, that's a smaller job, then it'll be the manager of HVAC that will manage it. But of course, anytime that we spend money, it goes through an approval process from the accountant to our procurement coordinator through finance, and there's documents that go along with that to explain how the money's being spent, right? So we don't really just spend money. There's a process for us to request approval to spend those funds. Anything over $5,000 has to go through that process. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Punza. Thank you for those questions. Further questions from colleagues on this interdepartmental MOU? Alder Festa, you have another question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. More of a request through you, if possible. And, I hate even asking for this, but we need some method of checks and balances. So maybe, again, when jobs are done, it doesn't have to be each job that's done. We need to make sure it's being done. I just feel that way. We're scarred. we're scarred from what is going on with our buildings and, I just feel like maybe it could be part of either the monthly budget reporting or something, kind of like what we did with even, ARPA funds, how
Yes.
we had that laid out.
So I think you're raising a good point, Alder Festa, which we have addressed before, which is that there is a set of reports on the ARPA funds that have been allocated and detailing which monies have been expended, which have not. We can schedule certainly in one of our monthly meetings, an update session where we, when we talk about the monthly report and we just focus on that section of the report to get an update on certainly these ARPA related projects, but there's a lot more than that too. And when we talked about the obligation, the interdepartmental MOUs a few months ago, we said as a committee that we very much wanted to have some follow-up from the city staff on the progress of those projects. Because it was good for those funds to be allocated and obligated, but then they need to be spent. And we need to feel confident that the administration of the city and the Board of Ed are on track to spend those monies. So yes, we will find an appropriate way to follow up on those things.
We do include a monthly report, which shows how much has been encumbered, how much has been spent, and how much is available. So there is that detail in the monthly report. We're happy to provide more detail. We do stay abreast of it. It's a federal grant, and it's there's a lot of rules.
There may be opportunities for us to hear from more than just the finance people, because some of the operational details they wouldn't have. So let me work on that, Alder Festa. But yes, we will make sure that we are hearing back on those ones.
Yeah, and specifically.
I understand the interest around the school buildings.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And if I could just say what we do we do it every 2 weeks, matter of fact. But we have reports from facilities where we say what the projects are, where the status is, what's been done, what hasn't been done, what the cost is. Like say if we obligated, say, $100,000 and we ended up spending, it ended up at the end of the day, it cost $98,000, and we know we have a few dollars left. But we track these things because they're ARPA funds. We have a little bit more, I want to say, micromanaging on these grants, but we do it on purpose because we know these are time sensitive, and if you don't spend the money, it goes back. Mm-hmm. So we do have, like I said, I think we meet every week, matter of fact, at 12:30. But we go over everything that's going through facilities, what you were supposed to do, has it been done? If it hasn't been done, why not? And then next meeting we go say, okay, fine, what was the time frame? You told me last Friday it was going to be this Friday. What happened? So we do, I do kind of micromanage them to a level but I do that on purpose because I know at the end of the day, if I'm at a place where I may have a few dollars left and I know I can reprogram, I need time to be able to go to the committees and reprogram, and I can't do it if we're not micromanaging, so to speak.
Thank you. Alder DeClover.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two questions. I know you said district-wide, but for me, Nathan Hale, Benjamin Jackson, I would like that for the chair, that when you do work in those schools, because parents will ask why our school is not on this list, because this is all public information. So through the chair, I would like an update of the district-wide work, what you did in those schools.
I think I can work with, whether we can come up with a list of any work we've done that's been funded through this source.
Right, that's why I just want to know if there's names that are not on here. Somebody's going to ask that question.
Understood. Yeah.
And then second, I've been watching Board of Ed since I joined the board. What is the actual number you must know to repair all our schools? I've been asking this for a decade. Do you have an actual number of all these schools, what we really need? Because they're all 20-year-old. We're putting a Band-Aid on most of the wounds. What is the actual number? We need to know that. That's the real question, because then we can't bond correctly. The Board of Education only puts $5 million a year. That's nothing compared to what we need to do. And do we really need to have an actual number? And that's through the chair. I would like an actual number for me personally, after a decade of being on the board. What is the actual number to fix all this? Because there was a promise made to the state that has not been kept. And that's the sad part. We haven't kept our promise that we would maintain the schools. At the end of the day, our teachers are suffering and our students. Thank
So I
you.
believe your question was, is there a number?
Is there a number?
Do you have a number?
Not at the moment, so there is an RFP that's going out to have a full assessment of the schools done. Again, I believe it was one that was done maybe about 10 years ago, I don't know.
Yeah, we're having another one.
And there, another one's being done, so an RFP is going out right now, maybe out.
For a firm to do like a needs assessment of all the school buildings? Okay.
Add on that. In this needs assessment, will we evaluate our schools, the ones that should not be repaired, and we need to close them?
I believe there's always a recommendation as to where the dollars should be spent and not spent based on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that question, Alder DeCola, and it would be very enlightening for this committee and for others to know what that assessment is. It's obviously a topic of great interest to our community and to this board. Further questions on this proposal? I want to rein it in, so Alder Farrar Santana, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to do a follow-up on that. If it is a needs assessment and we do capital budget, and I know you mentioned earlier that you're working on a capital budget for 26, would you include that dollar amount in that budget, in the capital budget for that? Or will it be a separate budget item that you're costing for the assessment?
I don't think they will be done. If they're an RFP and we're expecting responses back in December. So we won't have that number.
Not for the capital budget is what I'm saying. You won't have those numbers
No.
ahead of time.
No.
Okay, so that would be outside of the purview of the capital budget. Okay,
Yes.
thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understood that.
Thank you, Alder Farrar Santana. Further questions from colleagues? Seeing none, we thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Is there a member of the public who wishes to testify on this item? This is the proposal to approve an interdepartmental MOU between the city, the mayor's office, and the Board of Education to obligate the $5.5 million in ARPA funds recently reallocated to the purposes of school buildings. I see another staff member coming forward. Do you want to testify on this item, sir? Adding to the information. Name and address for the record, please.
Sean Madison, 1279 Quinnipiac Avenue, New Haven. I had read somewhere that ARPA obligations need to be completed by December 31st of this calendar year. And if so amenable, it would be great if this body could discharge this to keep this on the path to meet that deadline. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Madison. That is correct. And in fact, that is our intention, which I was going to mention later. This item, we will not take action on this item. Instead, I will be asking the president of the Board of Aldermen to discharge it in our next meeting. Thank you, Mr. Madison. Any public comment on this item, the obligation of $5.5 million in ARPA funds to the Board of Ed for physical work on our buildings? Any further comments on this from the public? And for a third time, any public comments on this item? Seeing none, we're going to move to the next item in our agenda. Item number 8, which is the cell phone pouches. This is also in regards to our New Haven Public Schools. It's a contract with the vendor to provide the pouches. Thank you for coming forward. We invite you please to sit down. We're going to just pass around some paper. And when that's finished, we'll ask you to introduce yourselves. Why don't you go ahead and give us your names and addresses for the record while we're waiting.
Sure. Stephanie Skiva, 350 Bristol Street, Waterbury.
Good evening, Dr. Paul White, 170 Osborne Avenue, New Haven.
Good evening, Eugene Foreman, 86 Thompson Street, New Haven.
Sean Madison, 1279 Quinnipiac and a mighty fluff board.
Okay, so thank you for those introductions. Now, yeah, we got these. Oh, extras. Please proceed.
Well, I am very happy to present this evening to discuss about creating self-free spaces in our schools. So first, part of the strategic operating plan is, of course, what we do with teaching and learning, making sure that we have the proper learning environment for our students. And so one of the things, if we go to slide 3. Okay, so one of the things we want to look to do is create this self-free learning space. Of course, this is a space where students are required to store their phones or electronic devices away from the building from the beginning of the day till dismissal. The main goal, trying to find the right angle, is to create a more focused learning environment, minimizing distractions. And why we want to do that, and next, some of this information is from the State Department of Education as well. In 2023, the Surgeon General issued an advisory on social media and youth mental health, and highlighting the relationship between excessive unrestricted social media use and mental health challenges in youth. Also emerging research is showing that there's significant negative impacts on students and brain development. And of course, one of the big things, notifications during the school day creates a law for students to move away from focused activities to checking their phones and not being present. And the fourth point, adolescence is such a critical time in development, and concentration with academic success, the ability to maintain that emotional balance. All of those things are important to developing strong students for their lives beyond. So we are trying to work to create environments where they do not have these distractions. And a couple FAQs about what is happening, because what if I need to reach my child during the day? You can contact the school, the main office. Main office will connect to the classrooms to get messages back to them. What if there's an emergency? Teachers will be able to unlock the phones. And of course, we always use the parent link system to get messages out during emergencies. Will the phone be safe? The students hold on to the Yonder pouch throughout the day while they're having it. And then if they forget it, depending on right now, schools are taking different approaches to whether they take them home at the end of the day or unlock their phones and keep the pouches in school, and we'll standardize those things. But again, if someone doesn't bring it back, they have to turn in their phone to be locked up for the school day, and they get it back at the end of the day. If it's a continuous problem, we want to have a conversation with the family about it, because again, we're trying to get to the goal of a distraction-free environment, which is always very difficult. And then, right now, you see the 8 schools that have implemented the use of Yonder pouches so far. And I have 2 of our amazing principals here to talk a little about their experiences. So we'll begin with Principal Stever, who has been doing this for a longer time.
Hi, good evening, thank you. So this is my 3rd year at Barnard. My first year, I saw that was a major concern on students on their phone. They were TikToking in the hallways. They were just mindlessly on their phone. So I needed to come up with a plan. So year 2, I did a lot of research, and I found Yonder pouch would be the best for our school and staff. So we implemented at the beginning of last year. I held a meeting for parents that were interested, let the students know we started in October, so we gave them a month in. And to say last year was an extreme success is being mild. We showed in our SBA scores alone, one of the top 7 schools in the district in growth rate. ELA. We had minimized our behavior incident referrals to bare minimum. If you ask me which grades were my most problematic, it would not be 5 to 8. Because of the distractions and the cell phone engagement was gone. It just extremely changed the culture of the students. You walk into classrooms, they're engaged in it. You walk into the cafeteria, they're talking, they're not on their phones. So it changed the culture of our students drastically in their engagement. Not only did that show in the academics, but the behavior piece as well. Obviously, there was some pushback. The teachers didn't have to handle that. That was all administration. We came up with, one time it's out, it's a conversation. We'll call your parent. Second time it's out, we have your phone for the day. Third time is a detention and a deeper conversation on why you're not following the school policy, and that has minimized. So we have, a sequence in order. The students know what to expect, and the staff follow it as well. I don't carry my phone around. Some individual cases we work out, for multi-language learners, they have a tablet if they need to use it as a resource. So we have other resources that we put in place that the cell phone, ideally we want to get them to using it as a resource, not just scrolling and not even using it for, purpose. So we've seen great success in the implementation for 1 full year and then now this year.
So to Principal Foreman.
So this is our first year using it at Troop. So I actually reached out to Principal Skeever to ask her about the pouches. And then so last year, so what we did this year was we didn't start until November, but we started messaging to our parents in August. So we let them know in August that we were starting with these. We talked about it during our orientation. We emailed information out to parents as well and to students. When our 5th through 8th graders returned, we met with them to explain what was going to happen with the phones once the pouches came in. So we rolled it out in November. It went much smoother than I thought. I was expecting a lot of pushback from students, but for the most part, the students have been very receptive. What was interesting, is that I had one student tell me that, she finds it useful to not have the phone, but what she's finding difficult is that now she has to talk to people because they're used to just being on phones all the time. So teachers are saying they're seeing more student engagement because they're not phones. We're not having issues with students constantly leaving the room to go to the bathroom because they used to text each other, meet in the bathroom, and do, like Stephanie said, to do TikToks and everything else. They were doing it in the bathroom. We've had, knock on wood, we've had no fights this year. We've had fights in the past because of messages that were being sent back and forth on the phones. We don't have any of those. We do have some students who have to keep their phones because they're diabetic, so they have Velcro pouches. So the students know that they can only use it to monitor their sugar. And some of them have 2 phones. So one of them they actually lock, the other one they keep in the Velcro just for their medical reasons. We haven't had much pushback from parents. Parents have been receptive to it. A couple parents have come in and said that was the best thing they heard was getting these phones because it's less distractions for the students. The teachers are focusing, they're noticing more student engagement. So more student-to-student discourse, more student-to-teacher discourse is going on in the classrooms. In the past, we've walked down the hall, students are walking down the hall texting and not paying attention to where they're walking. There's none of that happening now, so it's been good. So our students don't take their pouches home. So we have a system with our 7th and 8th graders when they come in the morning. Our 7th and 8th graders have breakfast in the cafeteria. So their home teachers give them their pouches in the morning. They put the phones in before they go up to their classrooms. They're locked up for the rest of the day. Once we announce our walkers, if they're a walker, they get unlocked. We have a system where they get unlocked with their bus students. Once their buses are called, we unlock them and they take the phones out of their pouches. Their pouches go in bins, and the next morning they keep them because I don't want to send them home because I figured some of them would come back on purpose to try to make sure they can keep the phones out. So that's what we've done with ours so far. So like I said, so far so good. I'm pleased with it. We've only had one incident with a student who tried to damage his. We contacted his parents and we didn't have that issue any longer.
And next steps are, we are doing a pilot with one of our high schools in Haven Academy beginning in February. And we continue to use all this information as we continue to roll out for full implementation for the 25-26 school year.
Thank you. Any further information you'd like to give us? before we ask questions.
Actually, I did get one, a
Please.
couple of things to say. So, and then what I'm noticing also is that in the past, there was always a battle between the student and teacher about having the phones out. There was a battle back and forth, and then what would happen is we were spending time, myself and my assistant principal, trying to get the phones from the students, so we don't have that issue any longer now, which is good. So it cut down on all of that, students being sent out of class for phones, and then, you know, that was taken away from us being in classrooms to do our instructional work that we needed to do.
I would like to also add, we saved some of the pouches from last year. We only had to purchase some for this year. And then my hope is after, I would say 3 to 4 years, that's just how we do business, and that wouldn't be an expense, right? And the phones are just not out. We got into this habit, adults and kids alike, with COVID or with whatever, that phones were always out. So my hope is it just becomes business as usual, and the expense of the undercoat won't be needed. Now that would be time to tell, but right now we're refurbishing and using the ones from last year, and we only had to buy some to replace for this year because we added a group in.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Perhaps just for you, Dr. White, could you just say a few words about the discussion that went through the Board of Ed on this topic and what kind of engagement from the public was brought into that conversation, and you know, how kind of on board people seem to be with this?
It's ongoing, because particularly having the conversation to engage high schoolers to get them ready, that's one of the reasons why it's a longer rollout for them. And so it's really about creating partnerships and discussion spaces so that community as well as the students have space to talk about this. It's been discussed at student council that this is hard. There's been a lot of support of students who are recognizing the challenge in this, but recognizing the good in this, that this is something that they need. Like, for example, for the forming game of realizing the challenge is becoming learning to speak to one another. That's something that's going to create a new social skill that we will work on with our students. But again, creating communities where we're not driven by our phones. And like, obviously, we also have the Board of Ed meeting going on, and I'm like, okay, should I be checking in on that too? As we as adults, I have to struggle with this. So we really want to create a space where kids are focusing on being students, engaging in their classrooms, learning to work together, talk together, communicate properly, and then responsibly use technology.
Thank you for that information. Any further presentation from you all? Thank you very much. So we'll now take questions from colleagues. I just want to remind us, the Finance Committee, that what's before us is a contract to buy a piece of equipment. And so we should, of course, be asking questions about, was this the right vendor? Do they offer the best product? Do they have warranties and such? It was good to have some additional context, but at the end of the day, the policy decision is one that the Board of Ed makes and the Board of Aldermen does not make. We are here in our fiscal role. And so we're not going to have a workshop on the broader issues. I think we've got a fair amount of context already. And so let's talk about the due diligence portion of this around these pouches, and should we be spending the money on them. So having said that, the queue is open. Alder Frith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Welcome, principals. 8 schools are currently implementing this. Where did this money come from?
Some of the schools used what they had of their ARPA money. I believe in Yellow School.
Mine was with our, we have a school improvement grant from the state, so we purchased ours through the city.
Okay, and for the 300, thank you, for the amount of 380,000, how many will this purchase?
That would be enough to cover the rest of the district.
Okay, so I guess what I'm asking is, there's 8 schools that are in already, so this would be minus those 8 schools. And this is for every school, because I'm getting the sense that the schools can opt in or opt out, or everyone is in.
Everyone will enroll. One Dr. Mayo's school and adult education would not be part of the number. I don't think we should be giving, kids would have the phone that's out there, but I'm not part of that count.
All right.
But it's to support all of the enrollment of the entire district.
Okay, so.
Including high school.
So there's 1 pouch per kid, and then that's gonna be it?
There'll be extras or pouches to be sure to cover any the malfunction or damage and work with that.
Okay, you did mention that. And the longevity of these pouches?
I do not have the undersheet with me, but I can get back with that.
It's not really necessary. I just wanted to have a conversation here.
It's a long.
Do you have one? I'd like to see one.
Yeah, I should have brought one.
Well, that's what I would like to see, Mr. Chair, if that's possible. If we could see what one of them look like.
Yes, we will follow up on that.
Okay, and I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Furlong. I have Alder Festa, then Alder Walker-Myers, then Alder Hamilton on the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, that was one of my questions. What do they look like? Out of curiosity. Was an RFP done to select a vendor?
They are the only vendor that does this type of pouch. So they're the only vendor that does this type of pouch.
This type, but are there other?
Not that when I did my research, no.
Okay, so they are the
Sole
only
source.
vendor, sole source out there that make these?
Yeah.
Okay, so we didn't have a choice but to go with that vendor. Okay.
And if I remember correctly, they've been used in over 1,200 school districts currently.
They cover 1,200 school districts across the US.
Yes.
Okay. I'm just gonna go down my list. So you answer the question about.
One moment, Alder Festa.
Oh, sorry.
I believe that there's a picture on your phone
You can
and you're
share.
passing it
Yeah.
around, just so that that's on the record.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
why don't you just hold on?
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Okay. Just to have an idea of what we're talking about,
Right.
you can visualize it.
You know you can zoom in.
Give them a touch.
So they have a magnetic thing at the top. So it's sort of like the sensors that are on when you buy clothes in the store. You need that machine to get them off. So we have these things that we have to hit them on to unlock them. So it's like a magnetic thing that they tap it and it unlocks, and then you take the phones out.
It's like a soft case with a magnetic clip on the top.
And the kids carry them around all day.
Yes.
It's not like they're put in a locker or something. Okay. Let's see, you answered the medical, I had a medical question, monitoring for medical purposes, where it's been used. This one, it's going to be implemented in high schools. Most of the high schoolers have laptops. How are we going to stop them from accessing social media on the laptops?
When they're using school-issued devices, we lock down system. We have Go Guardian and security in place to help lock down some of them.
I have a high schooler, and a lot of their friends come over. They find ways. Are we, yeah, they find ways around all of that. They have the school password for Wi-Fi. Are we changing passwords every other week or monthly? I'm just curious because I see the purpose of this, but there's other sources that can interfere, particularly on the high school level.
Yes, and that's where the work is being done on how this is working for them, what IT steps need to be taken to help lock down, again, multiple systems. And yes, students are resourceful, and part of the work is going to be keeping up with them as well. And also, as we build the culture properly, that's where the work is going to be done, that they understand the purpose and comply. And of coastal schools, we have most of our kids that comply.
And I guess once we build the habit, the high school, this question of high school won't be such a big issue, hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yes, and we'll be learning a lot, and absolutely are fully cognizant that New Haven Academy is a much smaller environment to do this in as we scale up to be at our largest schools, Hillhouse and Cross. So we know this is ongoing work to be in that position. As you know, I generally supervise the high school, so this is the work going forward.
And what is, I think you may have mentioned this, excuse my brain fog. How do the high schoolers feel about implementing this device?
On the surface, there's some hesitation, but in conversations that we've had, some focus groups, discussion groups, they're warming up to it, and it's a lot of front loading to get this to happen, to the point where we can make this happen.
What time frame are you looking at? Let's say the board, approves this. If approved, what's the time frame of implementing? Is it going to be for this 24-25 or 25-26?
For the K-8s, it would be later this year, and for the high schools, it would be the 25-26.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Alder Walker Myers is passed. So Alder Hamilton, then Alder Punzo.
Thank you, Chair Martin. Thank you, folks, for a very concise presentation. Walk me through, okay, when the students come in the morning, you hand out the pouches, they put their phones in there. Who does the lockup part? How does that work?
So when our students come in, like I said, our 7th and 8th graders come in, they go into the cafeteria. My 5th and 6th graders, it happens in their home with their teachers. So as they come in, because the pouches are locked again at night. So as they come in, the pouches are unlocked. They put the phones in the pouches and they just snap them closed, and then they're locked from there. So teachers actually check them before they take them upstairs to make sure that they're actually locked in the pouches. Because sometimes they try to be slick and kind of leave the pouches unlocked, but the teachers check to make sure that they're locked before they take them upstairs.
And follow up. The unlocking process at the end of the school day. The students have to go to a teacher.
So we have the system set up. So in 5, 6, the teachers on that side of the 3rd floor, they handle theirs. Our students, so our 7th and 8th graders, when they're going out to get on their buses, so we have 2 rooms where we do it on the 7th and 8th grade side. So when their buses are called, they just, as they walk out, it's like a big dial. So it's a big dial. They sit on the desk as they walk out, they tap it, it unlocks, they drop their pouch into the bin of their home.
Oh, and you just.
It doesn't take long.
Okay. For you, sir, the high school situation. Because I've been in some of the high school where I see it is such a distraction. Students cannot work because everybody's doing this. You know what I mean? Do you expect, I'm asking if it'll be a smooth transition, do you think? Or what are the bumps that you expect in the rollout for the high schoolers?
Initial compliance, really just trying to find ways around. And so it's going to be a lot of work on the administrative end to, again, engage students in this conversation, engage them in what the expectation is, and then following up and being consistent to have these expectations met.
Well, I'll be praying for you. Thank you so much.
I accept that.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Hamilton, Alder Punzo.
Thank you for that presentation. So it's not actually a policy yet, am I correct? The policy is there directives that every school has to follow, so every school does the same thing or follows the same procedure?
Those pieces are being developed, yes.
Besides Barnard and Troop, these other 6 schools, how are they going along?
It's been going very well across all of these schools.
Okay. And Mr. Foreman sort of answered my question. Obviously, you have 7th and 8th grade, you can have up to what, 125 kids. And so I mean to say, was time a concern at the beginning? to manage?
Not in ours. We have 2 adults at the front of the building where they come in and they just put them in or take them out. So it's just a good morning and it's a really quick process. Once they put it in, it just snaps closed. The magnet opens it quickly. So they're walking in. It actually engages staff to say, good morning. Okay, your pouch is in, and engage with kids, you know, just speaking with them first thing in the morning. So it didn't add any time for us.
Anytime. As far as dismissal, no, not a problem.
It's fine. I mean, it's really quick with it. Yeah. You just tap it and it opens.
And so in other words, what I'm getting at is obviously there's great success at Troop Environment. And I think it's because of the outreach you did early, because that's so key, you know. So are the other schools have to follow those same kinds of procedures?
Yes, and one of the things, Yonder also comes out and can come out to help with implementation and in terms of conversations, how to go about and support best practices for these rollouts.
So, Mr. Foreman, you keep the pouches, they don't take them home?
Yes.
They take them home? Oh, okay, so some schools will be different, some take them home, some
That will be
up to the administration?
Well, that'll be a final decision as we get ready to roll this out. Like obviously, because one of the big concerns is to make sure we maintain this supply. So
okay.
That.
Thank you very much.
And one good thing about Yonder, what they do is they send us lots of information that we can send on to parents. They send us statistics. We've had videos that we were able to show to parents. So, and when we got ready for our rollout, they met with my staff and me. So just to, you know, go through the process of what's going to happen with pouches and, you know, any hiccups that we might run into. They also gave us information for parents as far as, you know, because a lot of parents were kind of leery about it because of safety reasons.
Yeah.
But, you know, they gave us the statistics on that, and, you know, just what it does to kind of quell that. And, you know, especially during lockdowns, we had the issues with students texting parents, and, you know, parents are coming to the school, but during the lockdown, you can't get in anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we have our system where we send out information to parents, so it's cut down on that too. But Yonder was very helpful with us with the rollout. So, I mean, they offer a lot of information that you can give to parents.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Fairlawn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a very quick question. I don't want to interfere with the policy, but through you, Mr. Chair, I think it'd be good for us to see that printout from Yonder with the parent information on it. I'd like to see what that says. But getting back to the financial part of this.
Noted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How many pouches are you purchasing?
I mean, I think I bought.
No, I mean, for this 380,000.
Okay, sorry.
I don't have the specific number right for me. Just know that it was set up to cover the entire district plus that extras. I can find that number and report that down.
Yeah, my only concern is I'm thinking, I think there should be some kind of number as we are maybe expecting an influx of students coming in because of immigration. Are we going to have enough for these children? No matter where you are, look at this table. There's a phone in front of each of us. Maybe we should get pouches. But I think it would be good just to, because you're asking for a specific number or a specific amount, which must cover a certain amount of pouches. Right. So it'll be good to line that amount up with the amount of pouches that we purchased. Through you, Mr. Chair, we can get that number.
Yes, we will get that.
Okay. Thank you.
Alder Festa for a second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I flipped the page on my sheet. Is there any maintenance with these pouches or the magnetic mechanism that we know of anyway?
Not that I know. So I've just used my notes. Stephanie, have you had any issues with maintenance?
Not maintenance. Yonder is sent extra because when we were first doing it, they said if you leave it unlocked, it will break if you put it in a book bag with tons of books. So the key is is closing it at the end of the night, and then it won't break when it's not unopened. So it just took a few of us to figure that out, but now we close them and it's fine. But there's no maintenance; they're fine from year to year.
So there's no software
or
upgrades that need to be done with any this, just want to make sure we cover everything, because obviously if they break, is it under warranty at all? Is there a warranty under these pouches? If they break under a certain circumstance, obviously if books break it, probably not, but
I think there was, I'm not
malfunction.
sure on how long it is or what the replacement warranty is, but they could probably give it to you from yonder.
Okay, Mr. Chair, through you, just to, I guess, just warranty, in case there are damaged pouches that arrive, will they replace them? Things like that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, that would be good to know. I would just point my colleagues' attention to the packet. There's a memo from yonder, it looks like it could be an invoice. It seems to suggest that $12,244 would be ordered at $25.50 a piece for a total amount of $312,222. And then there's some additional pouches, 1,837, which is kind of like the extra amount in case people lose them. And then there's $4,500 in on-site services. So it looks like the total number is 12,244 plus 1,837, which I guess would be something around 14,000.
Okay.
So $25.50 per unit. And that sounds right based on what you folks ordered when you did yours?
Thank you.
All right. So if we need to order another 1,000, it's gonna cost $25,500, or whatever the new rate is when time rolls on, and they add new features to it or whatever. Okay.
Mr. Chair,
I'll defer.
I withdraw my request for the information. I can't see this, but I
But
heard what you said,
I
so
think
I
we
withdraw.
will fulfill your request by printing it on a larger format,
Thank you, sir.
which we can do. Any further questions from colleagues on this request? I'll just note a technical issue, which is that the order that is presented to us requests authorization for the purchase, and then it also authorizes the city to draw the money from an existing IT capital project account. So is this a redesignation, basically, of a existing capital expenditure? Is that why that's in there? Okay. So even though the title just says approving the purchase, it's also affecting the redesignation of a capital project, which is also something that we need. And that might actually be an ordinance amendment that we might need to do that. So,
I mean, it's IT capital, so
it's probably within the
it
same.
might be within the same.
Okay, well, for now, we won't worry about that, but we maybe just do a quick bit of homework on that to make sure we're doing the appropriate thing. It's not a transfer, so it's not a budget amendment, but it's a redesignation of already approved capital expense. So there is an approval in this order related to that. No further questions. We thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
And you are dismissed. Our gratitude.
It's not one, but two.
Right.
All right, so is there a member of the public who wishes to come testify on this item? Please come forward. Good evening, sir. Your name and address for the record.
Dr. Timothy Gersh, 2094 Chapel Street. So I probably shouldn't be here making these statements because my teenage daughter is busy rallying the NHPS students in Westville in protest. But I cannot deny that these yonder pouches have played a big role in helping transform the 7th and 8th grade at my school, Bishop Woods. They have helped turn the tide in a battle against cell phone use that we were surely losing. No doubt our phones are amazingly useful devices, but they can be major distractions that perpetuate online drama, cyberbullying, and mind-numbing scrolling. Some of us, students or adults, have a good level of self-regulation when it comes to our phones, but for the 11 through 13-year-old students in my classroom, these skills are not yet there for most of them. Removing phones from the already complicated environment that is a school has given us all a better chance of making the school day impactful and meaningful. Part of this has been providing students with opportunities to interact with each other during times like lunch or during downtime in classrooms. In past years, students were glued to their phones during these times. Here's a perfect example of how the pouches have helped our school. Recently, we held student council elections. Over 100 students were gathered in the cafeteria to hear the speeches of the candidates. Last year, students would have been completely disengaged on their phones and having side conversations, but all of the students sat quietly and listened to their classmates' speeches for nearly 30 minutes. There's no way this would have happened with cell phones involved. Yes, we could just have students surrender their phones and store them in a cardboard box, but these pouches offer a safer, more personal alternative. At our school, each student has a pouch assigned to them with their name printed on it. And this gives the students a degree of ownership of how the pouch is cared for when it is not in their immediate possession. It's not a slot in a pocket chart that it can be quickly accessed by another student or a paper class envelope that can be stolen and easily ripped open. One of the reasons that all of this has been so effective at Bishop Woods is that it has been a school-wide effort that was discussed with families and students months before it was put in place. We had a chance as a community to get our minds around how to do this and what it would look like before we had the pouches. Now we have staff appointed to help organize the pouches in the morning and in the afternoon. The students are involved in it as well. In my class, I have a few student leaders that eagerly help each day to coordinate the phones. At this point, it is just another part of the day. Please do whatever you can to help other schools have a chance at having these pouches. They may be just what is needed to get students back on track. And as for my teenage daughter, she doesn't know it yet, but she will also benefit from getting a break from her phone.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, sir.
Is there another member of the public who wishes to come testify on this item? I see someone coming forward. And when you get here, we'll be glad to hear your name, your address, and your testimony.
My name is Dejan Jet, 172 Oxbow Drive, Meriden, Connecticut. Good evening, everyone. I'm proud to serve as the Culture and Climate Specialist at Augusta Lewis Troop School. I'm also the Vice President of Elementary and the Vice President-elect of Middle Schools for the Maiden Federation of Teachers. Tonight, I want to highlight the significant positive impact of implementing Yonder pouches for our 5th through 8th grade students. As a school committed to fostering a safe, engaging, and academically focused environment, we face the universal challenge of managing the presence of cell phones in the classroom. They're powerful tools, but in the hands of our students, they often become barriers to focus, to meaningful learning, and even to harmonious relationships. This year, as a part of our transformation as a newly designated Commissioners Network school, we made the deliberate decision to introduce Yonder pouches. The decision aligns with our broader mission of creating the optimal conditions for academic success and positive school culture. The results have been nothing short of transformative. First, we've seen a drastic decrease in student-to-student conflicts without the distractions and at times instigating factors that phones can bring, like social media drama or DM or direct messages. Students have become more present and connected to each other. They're learning to communicate face-to-face, resolve challenges more constructively, and build stronger relationships. Second, our academic performance and engagement have noticeably improved. With phones securely tucked away, students are no longer tempted to text, scroll, or snap during lessons. Teachers have reported that students are more attentive, more engaged in discussions, and more willing to participate in activities. And this shift has created a classroom culture where learning is the main focus and distractions are minimized. Finally, the Yonder pouches have helped us reclaim instructional time. We've eliminated the back and forth over phone usage, which used to take up precious teaching moments. Now teachers can teach and students can learn in an environment that supports their success. And while there were initial hesitations from students, we provided them and their families with clear communication about our goals and consistent implementation, ultimately building buy-in. Students have expressed gratitude for the positive changes they're seeing in themselves, better focus, improved academic habits, and even healthier boundaries with technology. In closing, the Yonder pouches are more than just a tool. They are an investment in our students' success. As our school continues to formed through the Commissioners Network. Tools like these are essential for addressing behavioral challenges, improving engagement, and fostering a stronger focus on learning. So I respectfully ask this committee to prioritize funding for the Yonder Pouches so that our district can continue to build on the progress we've made at Troop and ensure the success of every student in HPS. Thank you for listening to initiatives like this that put our students first.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. And I see someone coming forward. So when you arrive, please give us your name, your address, and your testimony.
Good evening. My name is Leslie Blateau. I live at 410 Greenwich Avenue in New Haven, and I'm the president of New Haven Federation of Teachers. And I'm here to speak on a few items related to the proposal for you all to invest in the Yonder Pouches. So first and foremost, our members by and large support this initiative. As you heard from two folks who are working with students every day and who are seeing the positive impact of the Yonder Pouches in the classroom. It really helps to take the battle away from the teacher-student power dynamic and instead provides us a real tool for the school community to use, so then teachers can focus on what their job is and students can focus on what their job is. And I reached out to a range of middle school teachers, one, to encourage them to come tonight, but two, to get their take on things. And they, by and large, are reporting it feels like school again. It feels like kids can be kids, do what we know that they are yearning to do, but when they're stuck with the phone, they just can't. So the big picture is teachers are on board with this. It can't just be left to teachers alone to fight the cell phone battle. And this feels like a tool that Board of Ed, Board of Alders, city, admin, teachers, families, we're all getting on board with. That's a beautiful thing. So we certainly welcome the fiscal support from this body to help, because here's the thing. We know there are limited funds in the general funds budget. I was just at the Board of Ed meeting before that. Strong showing from our union brothers and sisters in 217 about needing a fair contract. So there's only limited dollars that can be spent. We know our cafeteria workers deserve a fair contract. I'll stay germane to the topic. How can we do it when there's continual demands on the budget? So a capital budget investment in Yonder Pouches is incredibly welcome, knowing also Yonder Pouches are not the magic bullet. They're not going to solve all of the issues. The high school transition will be significant, and it will require more than just pouches. But this is a step in the right direction to help middle schoolers kind of regain some sense of self-control and sense of purpose in the classroom. And then we can learn from the New Haven Academy pilot and continue to do what's needed. I think the big picture, and I'll close here, this investment from the city in this demonstrates that the city and the Board of Ed are working together to support our students and our school communities. Because the reality is so often schools are left to solve so many of the problems that are happening outside of school. And that really stretches our resources thin. So given that the city has an opportunity to say, look, we know this is a real problem. And we're not just going to look at the Board of Ed and say, fix your own problem, but we're going to say the city and the Board of Ed together can provide the supports that are needed. We're in school with kiddos 7-8 hours a day. And there's so much going on outside of school. We really need help from the city to try to make sure our students' needs are met and that our teachers have the tools that we need to do our jobs. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from colleagues? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Yes.
And if you wouldn't mind writing your name down for Dawn, thank you. Any further members of the public who wish to give testimony? Any members of the public wishing to testify on this item? I see one more person coming forward, please do. When you are seated, please give us your name, your address, and your testimony.
Good evening. My name is Manuel Camacho, 213 Pine Street, New Haven, Connecticut. Yeah, I come before you on this topic in full support that this committee does indeed provide fiscal support for these pouches. I talked to high school students over the past couple weeks as this topic is becoming more and more prominent in our school system. And in particular, students from Hill House High School. And the hesitancy that Board of Education member Dr. White said is certainly there. But I will also say that students are developing the self-awareness that cell phones are becoming a hindrance to them in classes. And in these conversations I've held with them and promoting that they have with each other, they're actually starting to convince each other that they need to make that realization that, okay, maybe we can do better, in classes, in our academic performance, if we put the cell phones aside, right? Just 2 weeks ago, I gathered a group of students from Hill House High School and had them do a kind of mock debate with each other on this topic, right? And I assigned them the different sides, right? I said, no matter what your personal belief on the topic is, we're gonna put you guys on different sides of the spectrum. And I want you guys to argue for that side, right? And really think about it, really deliver some points. And of course, they immediately, instinctively wanted to flock over to no, we don't want the pouches in classrooms, right? But by the end of the debate, having delivered really strong points that actually were said here today, right? That the social media excessive use is actually causing fights and is causing drama and, this tension inside classrooms when students see each other based off of a post or story they did, the day before, right? After the debate, the students actually changed their mind. They said, actually, we do want these pouches, right? And I was surprised. I thought they were still going to be strong in their stance of no, reject them, right? So all that to say that, yeah, the transition when we get to the high school level is going to be a bit difficult. Students right now are actually making that self-realization that, this could be a good thing. And so I just want to add that context, just put it out there that conversations are happening with high school students, and now they're starting to convince each other why this could be a good thing, and they're being receptive to it.
Thank you. Any questions and comments? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Anyone else from the public wishing to testify, please come forward. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to testify on this item? And for a third time, anyone else from the public wishing to testify on this item? Seeing none, we're going to move to our final item this evening, which is about software to track vehicles in the DPW. And I see two of our administrators coming forward. When you are settled, please give us your names and addresses for the record.
Rebecca Lumber, 122 West Rock Ave, New Haven, Connecticut, Deputy Chief Administrative Officer for the city.
Mike Siciliano, 12 Line Street, New Haven.
We're all ears.
So we are requesting this Napa Tracks. It's parts inventory software program for our new facility to get things going in the right direction right off the get-go. We never had an inventory software tracking system in any way, and this would help tremendously. And also it includes M1 Pro Demand, which is a diagnostic software program, which the city had purchased in recent years separately, but this NapTrax comes with it already. So we didn't renew it in September because we were applying for this, and just figured no sense paying for a different program when it's coming with it.
So the housekeeping, we're here before you today because although this software is well below all of our purchasing thresholds, and actually will save us money because we're getting not only the inventory software, but as Mike said, the diagnostic software for less than what we were paying for the diagnostic software. It does come with an indemnity clause. Despite 3 attempts at Napa National to try to knock out the indemnity clause so we could go just direct to purchase order. It is one of their standard conditions. We see it in a lot of other software, like Microsoft. It's standard business terms for them. They don't understand why we're so hesitant to do indemnity clauses. So we're here before you today to enable us to exercise the indemnity clause so that we can issue the purchase order and sign the terms of service agreement with Napa and begin using the software. In having conversations with folks about this, it was suggested, even though we don't do multi-year agreements for purchase order at this threshold, to save efficiency, if you guys would authorize this for multi-year as well through this vehicle, we would not have to come back for you for a $2,000 purchase order again next year. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you for that very concise presentation. We're all grateful for it. We will now have questions from committee members, starting with Alder Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair Marshall. Ms. Montero, you said $2,000. It costs $2,000?
It's $2,768.
And what exactly are we getting for this?
So it's a software package. It's a software package that tracks our inventory. So say you have 5 windshield wiper blades in inventory. It tracks them for you. It also flags for you when you might want to order more. So if you put this wiper on NH5 and that wiper on NH10, and by the time you only have 1 wiper left, it says, hey, you want to order more wipers, and oh yeah, this is how much it's going to cost, and all of that.
Okay, inventory control. And it tells you when you need to reorder any specific supplies. And this is for the whole Public Works Department?
Yes.
Okay. And you expect that it's, you've been using it already?
So we have diagnostic software that is just coming up, but this new software contains the diagnostic software. So when you attach the car, that's having these issues to the computer, it tells you what's going wrong.
What's going wrong, but also now parts that might be needing and needed for your repair, maintenance, and whatnot.
Yeah, that's multi-function software.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
And just to clarify, it's $2,700 initially, because there's a $500 one-time setup fee. So next year it'll be $2,200.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Jay.
Excuse me. Thank you, Alder Hamilton. Further questions? Further questions, colleagues? Alder Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just quickly, when you say hook up the vehicles, is similar to like emissions?
No, a vehicle is actually a computer, so it's like you plug it in your cell phone to the computer and it exchanges information.
And it tells you what?
The error codes mean.
Yeah, you get a code.
On the vehicles?
Even check engine light goes on. That usually means there's an error code. So when they plug it in, it'll show the code and diagnose what it is.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess what I meant by emissions is it gets plugged into something and it can tell you pass or fail, but this is a little more, okay. And how often do the vehicles get hooked up to the diagnosis?
Whenever there's an issue with it.
Only when there's an issue?
Yeah.
It's not like on a monthly basis,
No.
just to check for any problems?
No, usually only if there's a light on, you would have to. You're in there for an oil change, you wouldn't have to hook it up.
Okay. And then just on the fiscal impact statement, it has general of 500 and then 2268, but then there's a general fund capital line item, so this is coming from general funds.
I won't. Hold on, neither of us prepared the submission, so.
There's a
Yeah,
line
that's
item.
that's a general fund line item, yes. 150-12100-56694, that just tells you where to go within the general fund to find
This one.
the small bucket that this money's coming from.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Festa, for the questions from colleagues. My question would be, are we certain that it'll be the same amount next year and the year after that?
It's already quoted for next year as slightly less. I can't guarantee you in the future years that it won't have a slight increase to it, but it's still pretty good bang
Is
for
it
its buck.
something you could ask of Napa software company, whatever it's called, to see if they'd be willing to, if we're willing to give you a 3-year authorization, would they be willing to give us a 3-year price quote?
We can ask, trying to deal with Napa National has not been easy.
Yeah, I understand that the only reason you're here is because of the indemnification. We don't typically see something this small. It's just, for the sake of tidiness, it's good to hit. If we were gonna revise this order, we would need to not just revise the duration, you'd have to put the amounts in for the out years.
So as a creative person, I would say you could authorize us for up to $4,000 for the out years and still be saving you money.
So we'll consider that. But I would still make that request to see if they'd be willing.
We'll follow up.
Further questions from colleagues? Seeing none, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public who wishes to testify on this item? This $2,760 item with indemnification clauses attached to it. Anyone from the public wishing to testify on this item? And for a third time. Is there a member of the public who wishes to testify on this item? Seeing none, a motion is appropriate. Alder DeCola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we close the public portion of this meeting.
Second.
A motion's been made to close the public portions and do second. Any discussion of this motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. That was a mistake.
Mistake.
Okay. We'll take it as, let the record show that it was unanimously voted in favor of closing the public portion, which is now closed. So we are now in deliberations. Alder DeCola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move item 1, 2, 3, 4 as a read and file.
Second.
Items 1 through 4 have been moved as read and file items. It's been seconded. Discussion of this motion. Discussion of this motion, which is really about the monthly. Any discussion of the monthly report? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. It will move forward with a recommendation that the board read and file.
Mr. Chair.
Alder DeCola.
I move item 5 as a read and file.
Item number 5 has been moved as a read and file item. This is the comprehensive financial report for fiscal year 22-23. Any discussion of this item? Excuse me. Any discussion of this item? Seeing none, all in favor of this motion, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. The motion carries. Alder DeCola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move item 6 as a read and file.
Second.
Item 6 has been moved as a read and file. This is, and seconded, this is the federal state compliance report from RSM. Discussion of this item. I will note that there was a request to have some follow-up on some of the action items that were in that report, just to make sure that follow-up steps are being taken to remedy the deficiencies deficiencies or concerns that the auditors raised. So I will work on that with staff so that colleagues can hear back later about those things. Any further discussion of this item? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. It will move forward with a favorable recommendation for reading final. Alderman Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move item 7.
Actually, we're not going to move item 7. This one, we're not going to take action on this item this evening. The time frame is such that we need to vote on it next Monday. And so in order to do that, I'm going to ask Madam President if she would please list it as a discharge item on our next full board meeting. And so in order to do that, we'll take no action this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair,
Alderman Cole.
I move item 8 favorable.
Item 8 has been moved and seconded. This is the request to purchase the pouches. Discussion on this item. Alderman Walker-Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in favor of this item, that we make this purchase of the yonder pouches. In the beginning, I was a little reluctant, but hearing the information around how it's been working, I think it's an investment for our school system. So I'm in favor of the item. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Walker-Myers. Further discussion. Alder Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair Marchand. I'm also in favor of the item. Hearing from the principals and the teachers of the roll-up so far in the elementary schools and the positive impact that it's had, I'm in favor of it, and I'm praying that the rollout in the high school will be just as positive. So yes, definitely in support. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Hamilton. Alder Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, at first, I was also skeptical of this funding for this purpose, but after hearing all the positives, I liked that the kids are showing more socialization, which is something that we've lacked since COVID. So if this comes around full circle, then, you know, we'll have kids actually talking to each other instead of texting each other. It kind of reminds me of, you know, when kids are involved in after-school activities such as sports, they're not on their phones. You know, they're playing out in the field, or they're on stage, or they're playing an instrument. So this kind of just carries on that thought for the kids who don't have extracurricular activities. So maybe they'll get more involved, possibly in extra activities. So this could lead actually to more positives than negatives. Of course, we heard from 2 principals, and it was favorable at their schools as well as from teachers. And it sounds like the students have actually really come full circle as well in appreciating that they too realize, wow, I can now socialize with my peers. So I'm in favor of this item, and I encourage my colleagues to also vote favorably. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Alder Punzo, then Alder Furlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I realize that the high school is going to be a little more difficult, but as the years pass, 8th graders moving into the freshman year, they're already aware of it, they've already done it. So I think within maybe the next 2 or 3 years might be a little struggle in the high school, but as those kids graduate and the kids that are coming up that are used to it, accepted, they already accepted it, I think we'll see a big effect. I'm totally in favor of it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Punzo. Alder Furlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support giving this a favorable recommendation to the board. We are under tight fiscal restraints, but I think this is an investment well worth it in supporting our children. We know that communication has become difficult, spelling is difficult, and vocal communication is difficult. And so our hope is that with this investment, this will help our children become better communicators, which is vitally important if they're going to be successful, not just in school, but when they get to the workforce. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Furlow. Further comments from colleagues on this item? I'll just note for the record that the item before us, of course, authorizes the purchase, but it also redesignates capital funds. So one piece of information we don't have is what project or projects might have been undertaken using IT capital project account 3C242406-58704. So it'll be useful to know that, because there's no general fund money here, but there is capital money that's being redesignated. So does that mean that there was some subscription that the IT department didn't need to do, or that they did a project that didn't cost as much money? Or is it just that, no, this is just more important? And so I think that's information that might be useful for this committee, for the board to have at this point. So I'll seek that out as a follow-up item. Having said that, my opinion is, unless that's a whopping project that we're talking about, the pouches are more important, and we should redesignate those funds. Further, and I support the item. Any further comments from colleagues? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. The motion carries. Alder DeColo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move item 9 favorably.
Second.
Item 9's been moved and seconded. This is the DPW vehicle parts inventory tracker, which is only before us because there was an indemnity clause that the vendor insisted upon, which brought it to our attention. Otherwise, it was way too small for us to be. There was a request from city staff for us to consider making it a multi-year authorization. I think it would be appropriate to consider that, but I wanted to know what those numbers are in the out years. And so I would like the city staff to do that follow-up for us. I'm happy to offer an amendment from the floor at the second reading, if colleagues would agree that having a 3-year authorization means we don't have to hear this again for a few years. And it's only $2,700 this year and $2,200 or thereabouts in the out years. So sometimes we say we want to see this every year. This is one of those where I don't think we need to see this every year. So I'm seeing colleagues nod their heads that perhaps they are in favor of a 3-year authorization. But I would prefer to revise the order with that additional information and then offer it as an amendment from the floor. And I see from colleagues nodding heads that they'd be okay with that. So we won't amend it at this time. Having said that, any further discussion of this item? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay.
No.
We're tired. We'll say that as a unanimous voice vote in favor of the motion. So that item will move forward favorably. And I apologize for my coughing. I have no further announcements. Alder DeColo.
Mr. Chair, I move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn has been made and seconded. Any discussion of the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. It's a yes vote all the way. We are adjourned.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, my God.
That's okay.